The package arrived at 7:42 a.m., brown-wrapped, unmarked, and cold to the touch. Inside was a single VHS tape. No note, no return address. When the footage played, it showed a man being murdered in gruesome detail, but the murder hadn't happened yet. The man in the video was still alive. The receptionist at the front desk of the Willow Creek Police Department barely glanced up when the courier dropped off the brown paper package. No signature required, no label, no sender. It sat on the counter for an hour before anyone even touched it. It wasn't ticking, leaking, or heavy, just an unmarked box the size of a loaf of bread. Inside was a VHS tape. No note, no markings, just a single number scribbled on the tape's plastic shell in fading black ink. 3. Curiosity overrode protocol. By mid-afternoon, an officer popped the tape into one of the old recorders used for reviewing interview footage. Static flickered, for a moment, followed by darkness. Then, the screen lit up with what looked like a dimly lit basement. The camera was set up on a tripod, fixed and stable. No motion, no music, just the hum of an overhead bulb. The shot stayed still for a full 20 seconds before a man stumbled into frame, bound at the wrists, mouth gagged, face bruised and bloody. He was being dragged by someone dressed in black, gloves, boots, a hooded jacket, and a blank white mask. The man screamed into the gag as he was shoved to his knees. The attacker didn't speak, not a word. He just stood behind the man for a moment, pulled out what looked like a crowbar, and without hesitation, struck him across the back of the head. Once, twice, 3 times. The thud of each blow echoed. Blood pooled fast. The man collapsed, twitching. Then he stopped moving. The killer calmly turned to the camera, adjusted it ever so slightly, and then the tape ended. No outro, no music, just dead static. The room went silent. For a moment, everyone thought it was a snuff film, but something felt too real, too close. The bruises, the room, the lighting, none of it looked staged. Someone asked if it was archival footage. Another said it might be fake, but the timestamp in the top left corner of the video gave the moment clarity. August 12, 2025, 10:13 p.m. That was 3 days in the future. Within an hour, the entire tape was sent to forensics. The footage was genuine. No signs of CGI, no cuts, no loops. The blood was real. The violence was real. The timestamp was verified as embedded metadata, not post-editing. This wasn't a prank. Someone had filmed a murder before it happened. The man in the video became the next focus. Frame by frame, the forensics team enhanced the facial details. The swelling and blood made it difficult to ID, but they managed to get enough facial points to run it through facial recognition databases. Less than an hour later, the result came back. Mark Halden, age 41, resident of Willow Creek. A local high school science teacher. Clean record. No known enemies. No missing persons report. No recent threats. And he was very much alive. Mark was at home when the police knocked on his door. They didn't tell him much at first, only that they needed him to come to the station. He looked confused but calm until they played the tape. At first, he denied it was him. But then he saw the mole on the left cheek. The scar from a childhood accident above his right eyebrow. The crooked tooth. It was him. It was his basement. And it was his blood. Mark stood up and vomited in the trash can beside the desk that a blanket of panic settled over the station. How could someone know so much? His basement had never been publicly filmed. There were no open house photos. No videos online. The layout in the footage matched his home exactly, down to the cracked tile near the water heater and the exposed copper pipe. In the corner, whoever recorded the video had been in his house, and yet, nothing had been stolen. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing on the doorbell cameras. Mark lived alone. No pets. No recent visitors. And still, someone had dragged him into his own basement and filmed his murder. Before it happened, the questions piled up quickly. Who recorded it? Was it a sick prediction or a well-planned execution scheduled to be carried out in days? Why send the tape to the police? Was it a warning or a twisted challenge? Investigators tried to trace the package. No fingerprints. No DNA. The box was standard brown parcel paper, no unique features. The ink on the 3 was faded, as though it had been written weeks earlier. Even the tape itself was an older model, one no longer manufactured. There were no smudges, no chemical traces. Whoever prepared it had been meticulous. The security Footage from the police station captured the moment it was delivered, but not the person. The camera outside had a blind spot, a few feet of sidewalk not covered due to an old tree branch obstructing the lens. The figure that dropped it off wore a hoodie and a mask. No visible face. No vehicle seen leaving. Just a shadow that vanished. Now, the station was on high alert. Mark was put under a 24-hour protective detail. His house was searched, top to bottom. Cameras were installed. Still, the unease remained. The tape had arrived in their hands for a reason. And if what it showed was real, they were running out of time, and no one knew what the number 3 meant. Not yet. The next 48 hours felt like a clock ticking towards something unspeakable. Mark Halden hadn't slept. He hadn't left the station, not without 2 plainclothes officers by his side. Despite the police presence, he looked over his shoulder constantly. Ate little, jumped at noises. Something in him had shifted since watching the tape. It wasn't just fear. It was inevitability. The investigation, meanwhile, was stuck in a strange purgatory. They knew the crime hadn't happened yet, but couldn't legally arrest or charge anyone over an act that hadn't taken place. Every attempt to trace the tape or its sender hit a dead end. No packaging identifiers, no surveillance clues. It was like it had simply appeared out of nowhere. Detective Jensen, leading the case, grew more obsessed by the hour. He watched the tape dozens of times, examining every inch of the footage. A frame-by-frame breakdown revealed one small, overlooked detail, a sticker in the corner of the boiler tank behind the victim. The sticker was recent. It had a date on it, a service inspection just 2 weeks ago. The problem? When detectives visited Mark's actual basement, that sticker was missing. Jensen ordered a second search of the home. That's when they realized the most disturbing detail yet. The entire basement had been replicated. Someone had rebuilt it. Every crack, every scratch, every pipe. The video wasn't filmed in Mark's home. It was filmed in an exact copy of it. Mark didn't take the news well. The idea that someone had gone through the trouble to recreate the place where he might die broke whatever stability he had left. He kept muttering the same sentence, over and over. Who hates me this much? The police asked the same question. They questioned his co-workers, his ex-wife, his students, his neighbors. Nothing turned up. No grudges. No enemies. No threats. The only anomaly was a vandalism incident from 6 months ago, a broken window and a phrase painted across his garage in red. The truth is due. At the time, it had been chalked up to teenage pranksters. Now, it felt more deliberate. Then the notes started arriving. The first was slipped under the door of the precinct S back in trance. UVE senior ending. Accepted. Black ink on a square of newspaper. No envelope. No signature. The handwriting was blocky, childlike, but clean. The second note came taped to the side mirror of one of the unmarked cars outside Mark S. home. Time doesn't lie. Neither do cameras. Each note was short, eerie, delivered silently. The forensics team found no usable fingerprints or DNA. Mark, increasingly paranoid, accused the officers of withholding information. He became convinced the killer was someone inside the force, someone watching the investigation in real time. His behavior became erratic. He refused to be alone in any room, demanded they take apart every vent in the precinct, insisted the coffee machine had been tampered with. He slept with the lights on, arms crossed over his chest like a man already in a coffin. The fear had taken root. Jensen, meanwhile, began to question the nature of the crime itself. What if this wasn't about Mark at all? What if the tape was part of a bigger plan, something meant to derail logic and procedure? He posed the question during a late-night strategy meeting. What if we're not trying to prevent a murder? What if we're being lured into watching it happen? No one had an answer. The investigative team decided to shift focus, not just to who sent the tape, but why. Profilers were brought in. They described the sender as a controlled performer, someone who wanted a slow burn of chaos, not quick destruction. The replication of the basement, the timestamp, the delivery, all signs of meticulous planning. Whoever it was, they were likely close to Mark, or at least had observed him intimately. The detail in the replica basement was too precise to come from memory or public access alone. It required time, access, study. That's when they revisited the idea of the school. Mark's classroom was full of students, cameras, janitors, contractors. Surveillance footage from the last 3 months was combed through. Hours of footage, most of it normal. But one clip stood out, a man with a janitor's badge, scanning the hallway with what looked like a measuring device. He wasn't in the database of staff or maintenance workers, and when they enhanced the footage, they caught a glimpse of something tucked into his tool belt, a roll of painter's tape and a small stack of blueprints. By the time they pulled the badge number, it came up as fake. A door had opened. The man had been inside the school, within arm's reach of Mark. He had the opportunity to learn the layout of the house, perhaps even steal records, schematics, or keys. If this man was the architect of the basement replica, he likely had surveillance equipment, photos, maybe even remote access to Mark's home. That changed everything. But even as the pieces began falling into place, the clock was still ticking. The tape said August 12th, 10:13 p.m. That was tomorrow. And despite the heavy police presence, a growing fear settled among the team that this wasn't about stopping a killer. It was about playing a role in someone else's script. August 12th arrived quietly, with a gray sky hanging over Willow Creek like a heavy curtain. The morning was tense. Officers rotated shifts at Mark Halden's home. Inside, every window was secured. Cameras fed live footage to a mobile surveillance van across the street. 2 officers sat in his living room. Another 2 monitored the backyard and garage. Mark barely spoke. He just sat at his kitchen table, staring at the clock. Every hour that passed was another reminder. 10:13 p.m. was coming. He asked once, quietly, "Do you believe in fate?" No one answered. The investigation had all but confirmed that the basement in the tape wasn't Mark S., but a replica. The man caught on school surveillance, the imposter janitor, was still unidentified. At 7:40 p.m., dinner was delivered. Mark didn't eat. He just paced. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, streaking the windows. The neighborhood was unusually quiet. Even the usual porch lights and dog barks seemed to vanish. It was as if the entire street held its breath. By 9:45 p.m., the station had increased radio check-ins to every 10 minutes. At 10 p.m., Detective Jensen called in. "Any movement?" "Negative," came the reply. "All clear." Then, at 10:12 p.m., one of the body cams worn by Officer Hale inside the house cut to static. Just for a second. It came back on, showing him walking down the hallway, but the audio was gone. 2 other feeds from within the house glitched at the exact same time. Then silence. At 10:13 p.m., the power went out. All at once. Streetlights, house lights, internal surveillance, all blacked out. Backup batteries kicked in at the precinct, but the home itself remained dark for nearly 30 seconds. When it came back on, the officers were gone. All 4. The camera feed resumed with only the kitchen chair in view, empty. Mark Halden had vanished. The perimeter officers reported no movement. No one saw anyone leave. No sound, no gunshots, no struggle. He had disappeared inside a fully guarded home, under full surveillance, during the exact moment the tape had predicted his death. Panic spread fast. Within minutes, a search began. Drones, K9 units, thermal imaging, all deployed within the hour. The house was searched again, top to bottom. Attic, crawl space, yard. Nothing. At 11:26 p.m., the second tape arrived. This time, not at the precinct. It was hand-delivered to Detective Jensen's home, left in his mailbox. Same brown wrapping. No address. No note. Just a "for" written in the corner. When played, the footage was nearly identical to the first tape. Same camera angle. Same masked figure. Same weapon. But this time, something had changed. The body didn't twitch. It didn't scream. There was no fight. The murder was quieter. More calculated. The camera panned slightly at the end, just before fading to static. And for a brief moment, reflected in a metal pipe in the background, was another figure. Watching. Unmasked. No face could be made out, just the distinct shape of a person standing behind the camera, as if the masked man hadn't been acting alone. And then the screen went black. The timestamp? August 12th, 2025, 10:13 p.m. Exact. The forensic team confirmed it wasn't a copy of the first video. The blood pattern was different. The lighting had changed. The reflection wasn't there before. This was a second, newer recording, and it was delivered after the murder was supposed to have taken place. No body was found. No signs of struggle in Mark's house. No DNA. No fibers. Nothing. It was as if he had been pulled out of reality and placed into the video itself. The media exploded the next morning. Headlines screamed conspiracy, supernatural theories, even time travel. But inside the precinct, the atmosphere was one of quiet defeat. A man had been killed, and everyone watched it happen. Twice. The why remained unanswered. But the how left a bigger question. Was Mark Halden ever meant to survive? In the days that followed, a new piece of footage leaked online. A grainy cell phone video, clearly filmed from a distance, showed the unmarked surveillance van across from Mark's home the night of the blackout. In the frame, just at the edge of the video, was a figure walking away from the property, holding a small rectangular object under a coat. The shape resembled a VHS tape. No face was visible, no license plate, no sound, but the person filming whispered just one sentence before the clip cut out. "That's not the last one." Detectives searched for the source of the upload. The account was created minutes before the video was posted, then deleted entirely. IP address masked. No digital trail. 3 days later, another tape arrived. This one labeled 2. Not 5, not 4, but 2. The case was far from over. And the killer, whoever they were, was telling the story out of order, as if the narrative wasn't just about Mark Halden's death, but something far bigger and far from finished.